What if I told you that one of the most detailed early descriptions of diabetes wasn't written in some modern lab, but in ancient India, thousands of years ago? Well, we're about to dive into an ancient medical text, the Charaka Samhita, and decode its surprisingly sophisticated take on a disease that is, all too familiar to us today.
It sounds a little weird, right? But just imagine for a second. You're a physician 2,000 years ago. You don't have blood tests, you don't have labs. How on earth would you figure out if someone had a problem with their blood sugar? Well, you'd have to use the most powerful tools available to you, your senses and the natural world around you. And that brings us to this very curious question.
And there's your answer. It comes from this incredible text. Ancient physicians noticed that if ants were flocking to a patient's urine, it was a massive red flag, a critical early sign of a condition they called Prameha. The ants, of course, were drawn to the excess sugar, acting like a tiny living glucose meter.
So, what exactly is Prameha? The word itself literally means abnormal urination, but it's way more than just one disease. The text describes it as a whole group of complex disorders, and it says they can be caused by anything from your genetics to your diet and lifestyle. And, as we're about to see, the descriptions have some absolutely stunning parallels to modern diabetes mellitus.
Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. These ancient physicians didn't see Prameha as just one illness. They actually classified it based on which of the body's three fundamental energies, or doshas, was out of balance. And this idea was the absolute key to their entire diagnostic system.
First up, you've got kapha. You can think of this as the body's principle of structure and stability. It governs things like your body's fluid balance, lubrication in your joints, basically the physical stuff that makes you you. When you have too much kapha, things can get heavy, slow, maybe even a bit congested. Next is pitta. This is the body's metabolic fire. It's all about digestion, transformation, and producing energy. It's the force that cooks everything we take in, from the food we eat to the information we process. So, if pitta is out of whack, you might see issues like inflammation or excess heat.
And finally, there's vata. This is the principle of movement. It governs pretty much everything that moves, from your breath and your blood circulation to the signals firing in your nerves. Vata is what keeps the whole system in motion. When it gets out of balance, the body can become really depleted and unstable.
Okay, so using these three doshas as their guide, how many different types of Prameha do you think they identified? 2, maybe 3? Nope, they identified 20. That's right, 20 distinct types of this one condition, each one tied back to a very specific energetic imbalance. This is where their system just gets incredibly detailed.
And this table just perfectly illustrates their approach to personalized medicine. Look at this. The 10 types that were caused by a kapha imbalance, they were considered curable. The 6 that came from a pitta imbalance were seen as manageable. But the 4 types that were caused by a vata imbalance, the ones that involved a deep breakdown of the body's tissues, those were considered incurable. So the prognosis, your outcome, depended entirely on the root cause.
So the big question is, how in the world do they tell all 20 of these types apart? Remember, no microscopes, no chemical tests. They used incredibly keen observation, smell, color, texture, even taste, to perform what was basically a highly advanced form of urinalysis.
For instance, one of the 10 curable kapha types was called ikshumeha, and the diagnostic sign was impossible to miss: urine that looked, smelled, and yes, tasted sweet, just like sugar cane juice. It was a direct sensory confirmation of excess sugar.
Now contrast that with a pitta type called kalameha. This was identified by black-colored urine. This didn't point to sugar, but to a totally different metabolic problem, maybe something like severe dehydration or inflammation, which are classic signs of a pitta imbalance. And then you get to one of the most severe, incurable vata types called vasemeha. Here, the diagnosis was urine mixed with muscle fat. This was a grave, grave sign that the body was so depleted it had started breaking down its own essential tissues, just a catastrophic state of decay.
And what's truly mind-blowing are the modern parallels that commentators on this text have drawn. The curable kapha types, they perfectly mirror the progression from prediabetes to type 2. The pitta types line up with inflammatory or infectious stages, and those severe vata types, they reflect the terrible tissue-wasting complications you see in uncontrolled type 1 diabetes. It's just an absolutely remarkable ancient framework.
But the sophistication didn't stop with the diagnosis. Oh no.
The text makes it crystal clear that even if two people had the same disease, the treatment had to be different depending on the patient. It identified two main types of patients, and their paths to getting better were complete opposites.
So on one hand, you had the stula patient, obese and strong. Their problem was caused by excess, by overnourishment. Their treatment was something called apatarpina, or depletion therapy, basically to cleanse and lighten the system. But on the other hand, you had the krisha patient, emaciated and weak. Their problem came from tissue depletion. They needed santarpana, or nourishing therapy, to rebuild their body. Treating them both the same way would have been a complete disaster.
So what did that treatment actually look like? Well, it wasn't just a single herb or some magic prescription. It was a holistic blueprint, designed from the ground up to bring the entire system back into balance by addressing the root cause, not just the symptoms. The plan really had 4 core pillars. First, and this is just common sense, avoid the things that caused the problem in the first place, like a sedentary lifestyle or certain foods. Second, prescribe a very specific diet. Third, use targeted herbal formulas. And fourth, integrate lifestyle changes like specific exercises and even baths. It was a complete 360-degree approach to health.
And when it came to diet, one food was mentioned over and over and over again as the absolute cornerstone for managing Prameha. The text says that yava, or as we know it, barley, should be the main food for these patients. It could be prepared in all kinds of ways, from porridge to pancakes.
And this is where ancient wisdom and modern science just collide in the most amazing way. Recent clinical studies, which are actually cited in the commentary of our source text, have totally validated this ancient advice. Research shows that barley can improve insulin sensitivity by up to 30%. It also significantly lowers that bad LDL cholesterol and can even reduce dangerous visceral fat. Their observation has been proven right thousands of years later.
So when you put it all together, the diagnosis by the senses, the 20 different classifications, the truly personalized treatments, the scientifically validated advice, it just paints this incredible picture of a medical system that was deeply sophisticated, holistic, and incredibly observant.
And all of this leaves us with one final thought. In our age of high-tech medicine and gene sequencing, what can a system that relied on ants, observation, and barley teach us about the future of personalized healthcare? It really seems that the core principle of treating the individual, not just the disease, is as timeless as it is profoundly wise.